All right, guys, so here we are. I got two Godzillas sitting here on the stands right here behind me. This black notch sitting behind them is actually one of 3 Godzilla swap projects I have coming up. I've actually already done numerous old school F100 swaps. One has been featured on the channel, and otherwise, right, I get busy and most of the content sticks to the Foxbody content, but that's fine, because all of the swapping, the reselling, and everything else has given me a really good overview and understanding of what it takes. So let's dive right in to these motors and everything associated, whether it's your Foxbody swap or any swap that you want to do. This video will be informative for you. Here we go, 7.3 motors. This is probably what you would get. Well, this is what you would get if you bought one from me off of theinfamousproject.com, if you chose to buy the motor only. Now, the way that I actually get these motors is with a massive, and I mean massive, 6R140 transmission bolted up to it. And that transmission is 3/4 ton, 1 ton spec, and it'll fit in an old school F100. You can get it to work in there. However, there's no way, no how you would ever get it to fit in a Foxbody Mustang. So in a Foxbody, you're gonna want a manual transmission option, maybe an automatic transmission option. So we're gonna talk about those transmission options in a second. So it's really important to know with these guys is that there's a couple variants. Now this is most likely, right, how it's gonna look, whether you buy it off my website or you get one out of a wrecker with miles on it. The ones that I sell are delivery miles, guys. There's probably less than 15 miles on these motors. They literally go bare frame to a conversion facility for EV, and these motor packages are coming out. So all the accessory drive in this case is here. So everything from your AC compressor, power steering pump, your tensioner, your alternator, right, water pump, all that stuff is on there with the drive belts. Now, important thing to note, these motors that I get come out of an E-Series van platform, E450. These motors also come in F-Series pickup trucks, right? So the F-Series would typically come with a 10R140 behind them, and the E-Series come with the 6R140. So we'll talk about that in a minute. But what's really important to know is that the AC compressors that come on the E-Series, they are a traditional pressure switch, you know, power ground activated compressor, which means this will work. If you get some conversion fittings here, you can get these plumbed up to work with your vintage air setup or your factory setup that you might have in your Foxbody, and you're ahead of the game if you want to stay cool. Now, the power steering pump, lots of power, lots of opportunity there, and it does come with the factory line that comes off here, which is cut. However, you can get something TIG welded or converted, and then you can hook this up. This will successfully power your Hydro Boost or just your power steering, your rack and pinion as it is without a problem. Alternator, not much to say there. It charges, it does its thing. Now, an E-Series motor has elongated things, right? Because a van motor is always kind of tucked in the engine bay. So you got some elongated stuff here, but guys, you just literally take this clamp off and you can take this oil filler cap off and stick it right on the valve cover directly, and you're good to go. Dipstick comes out a little more forward facing. Again, that's not really a problem there. In fact, it's probably more convenient for you to have access. Here are your water pump ports, and these would go to your heater core if you opt to run heat. Otherwise, some guys end up running coolant temp sensors in there or cap these off or whatever it might be. Now, there are, Ford does as Ford does, okay? A pre-2022 motor, 2022 and older, right? So call it the Gen 1 version of the Godzilla. would have had a tensioner pulley here. They've since gone away with the tensioner pulley and have gone to a stretch belt. And well, kind of looks, right, like something's missing, and that's why. So stretch belt now versus having a tensioner. The wiring changed, and the wiring went from a 2-wire coil pack to a 3-wire, which means in most cases, I think all cases, to be honest, and we'll find out when we open up that control pack box, you need to convert the coils back to a 2-wire. You can get them off Summit, which means you just got to swap out the coil packs, no big deal. All right. The throttle body changed and the intake manifold changed. Throttle body is actually bigger in the 2023 and newer motors. So the choice or the option is up to you. I personally favor a 2022 or older. And guys, you can see right here, 2023 is what this motor is. I've got a 2022 sitting in a crate in the back corner there. So just keep in mind, depending on the year that you buy, is gonna have some differences. You might have to buy some coils, okay? But aside from that, you will need a motor harness out of an F series truck, a manual style harness, because what did Ford do? Ford integrated the transmission harness, right, into the motor harness or injector harness, if you will, right? So you end up with a connector like this, one big connector in 2023 that does engine and transmission in one. If you had a 2022 style, there would actually be, it's kind of integrated, but there's 2 plugs. So you could actually technically cut away the motor harness from the transmission harness. But with that said, it's just easier to get the motor only manual style configuration from Ford and go that route, okay? So, one other thing before we finish up that's important in terms of differences are the rockers. If you're doing a cam swap, the rockers changed in 2023. So you got to update the rockers if you're doing a cam swap. We're going to talk about that because I got a couple of BTR Truck Norris camshafts sitting right there. And that is something that you need to consider when you do your cam swap. You can see the oil pans are quite deep, right? They actually have an oil cooler on this side, and in our Foxbody case, this will clear, all of this oil pan will clear an F100. You'll get it down in the K-member or in the engine cradle, whatever it is, as is. You don't need to do anything. You're not going to want this configuration in your Foxbody Mustang. You're going to want a nice shallow oil pan. Same thing goes with a Bronco swap. And, right, you're going to need the motor mounts that are going to work in your application. You're most likely, these work in F100s and a Foxbody. We're going to be running long tubes. So I think that pretty much summarizes some of the differences between 2022 and older, 2023 and newer, and what you need to look out for in terms of the wiring harnesses, AC compressors, stretch belt versus non. And one thing that I'm going to point out right here, this is the oil pressure switch, and it is a switch. Just like in a Foxbody, it is an on-off. So if you guys want to actually measure your oil pressure, you need to put a T-fitting in here, or you need to find another spot. You know, they got those weird adapters that go in between your oil filter. But I prefer a T-fitting here, run the factory sensor, and then you can run something else that's going to your Dakota Digital or mechanical gauge or whatever it is that you might want to be able to monitor your vitals. So I know this is really long-winded and kind of, right, this is in detail. This is sharing as much as I know off the top of my head about these motors, so you guys can make educated decisions of possibly buying yourself a 7.3. Now, there's been a couple, I guess, rumors or misconceptions about these motors. There was the whole lifter delamination issue that came out. Now, guys, this is really important to note. The oil pumps on these motors, much like a Coyote, is pulse modulated driven, or at least I don't know if all Coyotes or later gen Coyotes, but anyways, the computer decides how fast the oil pump is going to spin. And at idle, these motors will sit around 8 psi of oil pressure. Now, in any normal driving application, the 8-pound sitting at a stoplight, you're starting your car up, letting it warm up or cool down, whatever it might be, you're never going to run into an issue. A fleet vehicle, your ambulances, your fire trucks, or whatever it might be, that it literally sit idling for like hours and hours and hours and hours without seeing any RPMs, that's when you're going to start to see some issues of maybe not having enough oil where you need it. So if you are in a hot rod application, you really don't have much to worry about. However, when and if you are changing the oil pan and you are doing some modifications such as the Holley pan and everything else, you can actually run the pump wide open, and then you're never going to have anything to worry about. But guys, literally you have nothing to worry about if you're a normal daily driven application. If you come and tell me you're going to put a 7.3 Godzilla in and let it idle for 10 hours at a time, well, you probably shouldn't have a 7.3 Godzilla in your application. Let's go over here and talk about a few transmissions. Now, the real important part about these motors, the transmission dictates your control pack. Okay, I'm going to repeat that. The transmission dictates which control pack you need to successfully be able to run this motor in whatever application it is that you might choose. You can see a Ford Performance box here. This is a control pack unit in here. The box underneath it is a Holley box. A Holley in there, there's a Terminator X in there. All right, so what's the difference? The difference is, if you want to successfully control your transmission, you need a computer to do it, okay? Now, the pre-2022 or 2022 and older motors, Mars Auto created a control pack that successfully was plug and play into the factory harness that would run the factory unlocked ECM for the motor and the 6R140. And Mars is the only solution we're successful at running the 7.3 Godzilla with a 6R140 behind it, and it needs to be a 2022 or older harness. So if you bought this 2023 motor, what you would have to do is you'd have to change the coils, and you would have to buy the 2022 style harness, take this harness off, put that harness on, and you'd be able to run the Mars kit successfully. That's what I did with a number of the F100 swaps that I completed. Now, we cannot run a 6R140 in a Foxbody, nor would we want to, because it is massive and it is heavy. In a Foxbody, we're either going to want a manual option, which if we want to talk about manual, it's the easiest thing because we only need to run the motor. We do not need to run a transmission. So what does that mean? That means that OBR has a standalone manual engine harness for the Godzilla. Holley, Terminator X, can run the motor only. You have Ford Performance. They have a manual control pack that runs the motor only. And I don't know, I think Haltech has an option out there. There might be a couple other options. So manual is obviously the easiest one because you don't have a transmission to control. Now, if you want an automatic transmission, right? So Mars got the 6R140 figured out. Ford themselves offer a 10R140 control pack, and they offered it for the longest time, which is honestly the most useless thing. I have no idea why they did it that way, but they did, because not too many people want that 10R140. It's prone to a couple issues, and not everybody wants the 10-speed. So with that said, there is a 10R80, which is sitting right down here behind me. So this is out of your newer F-150s, out of your newer Mustangs. They fit in a Foxbody, and Ford Performance parts in this box right here. They just recently finally released this. So we got a Ford control pack option that will run the 7.3 with the 10R80 together. Now, if you wanted to run the 6R80, and you're like, I don't want my transmission shifting all the time, or I got a good deal on a 6R80, you can, or you do have an option. Your option would be you need to run the motor on its own standalone control pack, being either Ford, OBR, Holley, Haltech, whatever it is that can run it on its own, plus a controller for the transmission that's completely independent from US Shift. And US Shift have pretty much perfected the 6R80 controller that allows people to run that transmission in a whole array of different applications. However, at that point, you're running two separate systems. You're running the transmission off one, so that means you got to go in, your software, laptop, whatever, figure out the transmission, and it's got to read speed, vehicle speed sensor signals and everything else to get dialed in. And then you would have your software and whatever else that's running the motor independently, as opposed to being able to run everything in one. And that's why the 10R80 with the Ford control pack is so appealing at this point in time. So I will open these boxes up here in a minute, but let's go through some of the other important parts that are laying here behind me. So some Foxbody specific stuff here. Headers. Long tubes, ultimate headers. This is two sets because I got two motors and two swaps, i.e. the black car and the Calypso car. There is a vert outside that will be Godzilla swapped, but that will probably be happening after these two are complete. You will also see Team ZK member and another Team ZK member, and these K members accept and come with everything that you need to bolt your Godzilla into your Foxbody. And of course, you know, the particular control arms that go with the Team Z kit and everything else. So that takes care of your exhaust, or at least up to your mid pipe, and takes care of you being able to bolt the motor into the car. Now, with that said, I talked about shallow oil pans earlier. We're going to talk about the options there with Holley. There's probably some more as we're getting into some modifications. So this here being a Holley intake manifold, and this is a nice low profile option that I've seen successfully fit underneath a stock hood. I do not have a stock hooded car here, but it does fit underneath. And with that, depending on which throttle body that we have, you'll notice that this automatically has the throttle body facing forward instead of the throttle body shooting upward, which would really make for a hard time when you want to try and close your hood, because this pipe is going to be right up here where your hood is literally going down like so. So Holley intake is a nice option. BTR, aka Brian Tooley Racing, has a beautiful high-rise manifold option as well. Guys, you can run LS fuel rails on here. I'll let you make your own conclusions about that. But yeah, cross compatibility is existent with the Godzilla. Now, Truck Norris BTR camshafts. These camshafts are proven to add 100 horsepower to that motor. So you are instantly going from 430 horsepower to 530, could be even more by the time you do your tuning and whatever else, exhaust mods, upgrades, all of those things. And one camshaft only. You don't need to change 4. You only need to change 1. And you can do it quite easily. And we are going to be installing these camshafts in future videos so you guys can see how to do it, how to lock out the VCT. And in this case, or in these two cases, we will have to change the rockers. But if it were a 2022 or an older, you do not need to do valve springs. You do not need to touch push rods. You do not need to touch the rockers. You just simply need to do your cam swap with your lockout and whatever, and the new associated parts that are required by them. Now, here's a cool piece when we're talking about intake plumbing. This guy here actually goes in the factory hole for your air box, right, in your Fox. So if you don't have a completely shaved out engine bay, or you're not trying to do some other trickery, that guy will go right in there, and then you just need to get from here up to your throttle body there, right? A little bit of custom piping, not a big deal. Super nice piece. And then if you really want to show off, you get these beautiful 7.3 emblems. So those are going to look killer on the side of this black notch. So you have those there. Like I said, 10R80 bolts right up, 6R80 bolts right up. In fact, any newer modular transmission shares the same bolt pattern as the Godzilla has. So your TR3650 manuals, obviously whatever QuickTime bell housings that you need. If you want to run a TKX, you want to run a T56, whatever it might be. So black notch here, getting the 10R80. Calypso coupe here. I got a TR3650 or maybe the T56. We'll see which way we're going to go with the gear ratios and everything else. This is an IRS car in the back. So this has an 0304 Cobra style IRS already. So this is going to be a really cool car. So this one is staying naturally aspirated. So it's going to get the BTR camshaft, and it's going to get the low-rise Holley intake, and it's also going to get the high mount accessory drive kit to clean up all the accessories and get them to work a little bit nicer in the bay of a Foxbody. Now, if you're wondering, this as is will fit in your Fox if you ditch the AC. Okay, so if you don't want to do all the fancy or spend all the money on the high mount accessory drive kit that Holley has, if you knock off this AC compressor, at least that's what I'm told. Maybe there's a way to make that fit, or maybe it's just a matter of doing the SN95 sway bar. I do not know, but I might do some investigation and get to the bottom of that so you guys will know. Fun fact about the Godzilla, the 7.3. It actually takes up less real estate than a Coyote motor. That is because being pushrod, it doesn't have all the overhead bullshit. It doesn't have the head size on the top, the valve covers that are literally double the size. So you actually get a little bit more working room for your Foxbody, but it doesn't allow you to run the factory booster. It's the same thing as if you're doing a Coyote swap or wherever it might be. You'd see I got 2 Hydro Boost set up sitting on the floor here. So we will be converting to Hydro Boost in both these cars, or you could do manual brakes if you wanted to. And that keeps things clean and simple and everything else underneath the hood, but it's manual versus power brakes. And remember, of course, the power steering pump that comes on these motors, more than adequate to run that Hydro Boost setup. So now we talked about the Calypso notch, getting kind of cam, intake, exhaust. You guys are probably like, well, what are the head options? Well, very good question. Texas Speed was doing heads. Texas Speed was doing camshafts. I think Frankenstein or some other guys were dabbling with heads. Somebody else as well. I can't remember them off the top of my head. Long story short, the stock heads really aren't designed to get ported out and to be messed with extensively. They also really don't like to see super high RPM ranges. There have been a couple issues with valve seat wear and a couple other things to that nature. So that's why when you see a motor like the Megazilla that Ford released, you'll notice that the red line is actually pretty low, as well big block motors typically are. There's a lot of power that lives below the 6,000 RPM mark, and as much as we want to rev our stuff up to 7,000 and beyond, guys, these are not E60 M5s, which I am used to, which I can bring up to 8,300 RPM on a daily basis and not even have to worry about it. So with that said, I'm not sure if somebody has cast out a set of aftermarket heads yet. I'm sure it will happen. It does need to happen. And like I said, what I say today could be completely different tomorrow, because every day that goes by, there is more R&D, there's more information, there's more knowledge out there, and I try and absorb as much as I can, but I only know what I know. As you watching, you guys only know what you know. So hopefully this is helping you guys stay a little informed. Now, going to the black notch behind me that is getting the 10R80 behind it. See this crate right here, guys? That is from Harrop Engineering, the wild Aussies from the land down under. And that's right, we have a full Harrop root style blower setup in that crate. So let me wheel that out so we can have a look. Look at this. Even their crates are branded. So this is not a cheap outfit, folks. You will pay your money. So in here you can see we got a cooler of sorts. Oh, look at this. Look at this beauty. Here's our fuel rail assembly, probably some of our pulleys. Guys, what a monster. This thing is just gonna be insane. We know, like, it pretty much really doesn't matter what we're gonna do here. It's gonna be like the 700-800 horsepower beast with ease and reliability and Godzilla power. It's just gonna be nuts. I cannot wait to get this bolted on one of those motors. So there is what comes in the Harrop box. Boost. All right, so now that we've looked in that, I want to talk about the control pack stuff. So let me move the intakes and stuff and we'll get into the control pack boxes. It's important to note something when you're doing a build, and sometimes there's products or companies that surface that offer solutions that work. But what I say is that depending on how long you plan on keeping your project, when you're buying something that's critical and vital to the way that your motor is going to run, consider longevity of the company that you're buying from, right? If you're buying a Ford Performance part and there's an issue, Ford is most likely going to make it right, and Ford isn't necessarily going anywhere. Same thing for Holley. I don't think Holley will be going anywhere, at least not during our lifetimes. But, you know, OBR, as much as they were like first to market and everything else, who knows? Or maybe OBR gets absorbed and purchased by somebody else, but it's just something to keep in the back of your mind. Like if something happens and you need support, it's sort of like what happened with Quarter Horse or some of the moats and all that stuff. Everything was great, then everything went away and stuff sort of came back, and you just never know. So this is going to be our main fuse block kit and harness, right, that would plug into the PCM. So this is what's mimicking. You see there's the OBD2 port with the check engine light. Very similar to what you guys would see with a Coyote swap, right? So this is what replaces the body control module side of things when one of these motors comes out of the van, and the PCM has that port that's going to the body, so the body that's linked to the gauge cluster and to all of the other internal functions, that is telling the motor things are okay, the PAT security, all that good stuff. Well, that all comes from the body, and this mimics what the body does. So you're plugging in stuff like your throttle pedal in here, your mass airflow sensor in here, your OBD2 ports in here, your drive-by-wire throttle pedal. All of those things are in there. And let's see here, we actually got a massive, ugly air box. So I'm assuming they feel like the only thing that's of value in here to me is this mass airflow sensor, which actually I don't even need that because all my motors come with mass airflow sensors. But it's important to have that tuned accordingly based on the diameter of the pipe that you're gonna run once you get your throttle body and air intake and everything else sorted out. So let me go get a razor blade so we can cut some boxes open. All right, this guy is way more like it. So different part numbers. This one starts with an H, this one starts with a C. These are the ones that I've been using in the F100 swaps, and they work just fine. So probably more friendly on the firewall of your Foxbody versus this guy. I don't know, maybe this one is okay. I don't know, but there's the options. You honestly, you have options when it comes to the throttle pedals. So whatever, put those both in there. So what do we got here? This really doesn't say anything on it other than Ford Performance. Okay. This is the transmission harness. Okay, so it's on its own. This transmission harness is going to plug into this harness. Or sorry, so this harness and this harness. So this is body control side. This is transmission side. Will both plug into, I believe this guy would be the unlocked computer that is designed to run in a standalone manner. Comes in the pink. So you see there's 3 ports on here. One's going to be body, one's going to be motor, one's going to be transmission. Which brings me back to the point we need the right injector harness for the motor. So it does not come in the kit. I'm gonna guess any control pack, guys, always runs around 3,000 bucks. Into the Holley box. So pickup tube assembly for oil. All right, to go with our Holley accessory drive and oil system kit. So you can see here, AC compressor gets moved from down here up to here. Alternator kind of stays in the same place. Power steering pump gets shifted up. We have pretty much everything that's in blue here is what's in this box. So shallower oil pan and all of our accessories up higher. So we got boxes and boxes of stuff. And I'm not gonna open all of these boxes up. I'll just show you a couple, right? Everything is nice and black, branded Holley in there, if you can see that through the plastic, right? What else do we got here? Oil pump assembly, right? So that way things will run wide open, boxes and boxes. Oh, new dipstick tube, right? So make things shorter and easier to access. Alternator bracket. So again, this is probably going to be a nice, oh, that's the black one. All right, nice black pulleys. What do we got here? This looks like a nice new water pump. All right. Things finished in black. We got here. This is probably our pickup tube assembly, or what is this? Heater hardline. Heater hardline adapter. You got here alternator pulley cover. Guys, everything is in here. There's gonna be, where are these? Windage tray, right? From the oil pan, there's gonna be a brand new oil pan down in here. All the goods, the Terminator X, everything that we need to run this bad boy. So there you have it, guys. That's as in-depth as I can get, or call it an intro to possibly doing a Godzilla swap on whatever application it might be that you have going on. Hopefully this video has been informative and has helped you out. And more importantly, you're going to be able to follow along these builds and see exactly how all of this stuff gets installed, from the cam swap to the high-rise mount kit to the control pack wiring to K-members, exhaust, transmissions, install into the cars. It's all going to be coming up on the channel. So if you are interested in a Godzilla motor, be sure to hit up my website, theinfamousproject.com, and you can pick the motor combination setup that you wish. And hopefully we'll see you back here on the channel. And if this video helped you, please like, subscribe, do all the things, and we'll catch you back here next time on The Infamous Project.